open in Hay River and Fort Smith.
When we're excluding people, that's kind of recreating some of the hurt.
There's still no healing for some residential school survivors in Newfoundland and Labrador.
I'm excited about the journey, and I will speak to the chiefs on their issues.
And Marleen Poitras becomes the first woman elected as the Alberta Regional Chief for the AFN. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Last November, Justin Trudeau apologized to residential school survivors from Newfoundland and Labrador who were left out of the Harper government's apology in 2008. But not all survivors in the Eastern Province have been recognized. APTN's Justin Brake reports.
No, I was scared.
Leah Ford grew up in Hopedale on Labrador's north coast. At 7, she was sent away to the Moravian Church Residential School in Makkovik, where she says she endured abuse from a teacher, a house mother, and older students.
I got caught that time.
What happened?
I got a beating on my bum.
And who did that?
Mr. Sparks done that when I stole from his room.
She recalls being whipped with tree branches and being forced to bathe in dirty water, contracting lice.
And I full of nicks. I scratched so much I had to store. I never had that when I was home.
This burden is one that you no longer have to carry alone.
The Trudeau government's settlement and apology in November did not include survivors who attended the schools in Newfoundland and Labrador prior to 1949, or those who attended only during the daytime. Ford attended in the mid-1940s, so wasn't eligible for the settlement and apology.
I was really disappointed, but I wouldn't cry about it. I said they can keep their money.
Rye Moran of the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation says thousands of survivors across Canada have not seen justice.
Well, I think on the one side of things, we can celebrate the fact that there was an apology and there was a recognition of the harms done. At the same time, we have to recognize that we have got so many more apologies that we need to make in this country.
Ford says she's not the only living survivor in her own family who's been denied justice. Her brother was too.
It is very unfortunate where we see people being left out. I can only imagine how hurtful that would be.
In November, Premier Dwight Ball announced the province would apologize for its role.
The apology for the provincial government would be made in conjunction with the discussions that we would have with our Indigenous groups.
4 months later, the government still has not announced who will or won't be included in their apology. In a statement to APTN, Premier Dwight Ball's office said that, given the sensitive nature of the subject matter and the consultations, we will not comment on the details of the apology until all consultations are finished. In November, the International Grenfell Association apologized for its role in operating 3 of the schools. IGA Chair Keating Hagman said, "The IGA offers its sincere apology for in any way not sheltering these individuals from the suffering they endured, and that, in the spirit of reconciliation, IGA looks forward to walking into the future with all peoples of Newfoundland and Labrador." The Moravian Church ran schools in Nain and Makkovik. APTN reached out to church representatives in Labrador, the US, and the UK. No one willing to do an interview has responded to those requests.
When we're excluding people, that's kind of recreating some of the hurt, and it can be a real barrier to actual long-term reconciliation, actually.
As survivors await apologies from the province, it's unclear whether Ford and others left out of the federal apology and settlement will see justice. Justin Brake, APTN National News, Halifax.
The end appears near for a story that APTN National News broke 7 years ago. The Supreme Court is set to rule Friday on Bruce Carson. Carson, as you may recall, was convicted of influence peddling, trying to use his contacts in the Harper government to sell water filtration systems to First Nations. The former Harper aide appealed to the Supreme Court that doing business with First Nations isn't doing business with Ottawa. In February, Marleen Poitras became the first female Alberta Regional Chief. for the assembly of First Nations in their near 40-year history. On Friday, the new regional chief was inaugurated by chiefs from Treaties 6, 7, and 8, and by National AFN Chief Perry Bellegarde. APTN's Chris Stewart reports.
Enoch Cree Nation hosted the inauguration of newly elected AFN Regional Chief Marleen Poitras. Chiefs from the south of Alberta, like Vincent Yellow Old Woman, and the north, like Alan Adam, came to honor Poitras and to give her their support.
We look up to you and we honor you. And if Perry gives you a hard time in Ottawa, you call us and we'll come and fix them for you.
AFN Regional Chief Perry Bellegarde told the gathering that having the second female AFN Regional Chief is an important milestone, and that Poitras' decades of treaty work will be vital in future negotiations with the Crown.
I wanted to say thank you for letting your name stand to be Regional Chief for Alberta Region, and to acknowledge your leadership and the gifts you bring to our table nationally. And I wanted to do this because I know you've been around treaties for many, many years, and we're going to rely on that experience you bring there to help guide our work in a good way.
Poitras has already begun working on behalf of the people of Alberta. Her term will run for 3 years.
I'm excited about the journey, and I will speak to the chiefs on their issues, and bring them and advocate on your behalf in Ottawa. And I will need you, and I will be calling upon you to support me and to help me along the way.
This night was about celebration. Chief Poitras' mother was in attendance. The new regional chief says she felt the support from the chiefs from Treaties 6, 7, and 8 tonight.
But it feels really good, and I'm really proud, and I feel the support of the chiefs. I mean, I'm sure everybody felt it from all what was being talked about today. So I feel good going forward and empowered to be able to speak on their behalf.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Enoch, Cree Nation, Alberta.
The wait is finally over for residents in the Northwest Territories. The 2018 South Slave Arctic Winter Games kicked off this weekend with opening ceremonies. APTN will bring you daily coverage on the games, cultural activities, and athletes. Here's our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs with more.
There was only standing room when 1,900 youth, more than double Hay River's population, filed in for opening ceremonies. Each team is here to win and to have fun. Athletes from across the circumpolar world are testing their skills in the 2018 Arctic Winter Games, being held in the South Slave area of the Northwest Territories. The week-long event is the biggest of its kind up here. The torch is returning to the South Slave for the first time in nearly 5 decades, and Hay River has a brand new arena to host a variety of sports. The games are also taking place in Fort Smith, about a 3-hour drive from Hay River. Youth ages 15 to 18 from 9 countries are participating in traditional and Western games, such as Dene hand games, hockey, dog sledding, and more. But residents of Hay River and Fort Smith will share more than just their towns. At the opening ceremonies, guests were greeted to the JBT Jiggers of Fort Smith and the Tuktoyaktuk drummers and singers, and Dene drummers. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Hay River.
And we have more of our own team coverage of the Arctic Winter Games coming up later in the show. The games are happening all week in the Northwest Territories. The Quebec Native Women's Association has a list of demands for the national inquiry in order to support an extension. Details after the break. Here's a look at Tuesday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. +1 in Fredericton, Charlottetown, and St. John's. Cloudy and -3 in Cartwright and Nain, -7 under the sun in La Grande. A sunny 7 below in Chibougamau, -2 in Montreal. +2 in Windsor, London, Toronto, and Peterborough. 5 below in Kapuskasing, Thunder Bay, and Big Trout Lake. +1 in Thompson and Norway House, -9 in Churchill, +1 in Winnipeg, Brandon, and Gimli Harbor, where snow is likely. In Saskatchewan, +3 in Estevan and Saskatoon, 0 in North Battleford, +3 in Meadow Lake and La Ronge, -11 in Uranium City. Welcome back. The Quebec inquiry into relations between Indigenous people and certain public services is going into week 17 of hearings. Today, members of the Atikamek community of Manawan testified before the commission. Danielle Rochette reports.
The chief of Manawan, Jean Rocatawa, proudly displays a small medallion of Sakian Petitquet, who drowned in September 2016. According to Ottawa, the 8-year-old girl might still be alive if Manawan would have had the essential services of an ambulance.
J'ai vu la présence des gens avec des paramédics. Je pense que cette jeune fille-là, il y aurait eu les mêmes chances de survie si on avait les ressources dans la communauté.
For more than 20 years, the Atikamek community has been fighting to get those services. Manawan, with its 2,500 members, is only accessible by a logging road and is located 88 kilometers north of Saint-Michel-des-Saints. For Ottawa, Manawan is victim of discrimination.
Les Atikamek de Manawan sont de toute évidence victimes de discrimination par les autorités gouvernementales québécoises, particulièrement à l'égard des services préhospitaliers d'urgence. Le Conseil des Atikamek de Manawan est convaincu qu'en maintenant la situation discriminatoire du service ambulancier pour les membres de notre communauté, il en résulte une inégalité pouvant être qualifiée du racisme systémique.
Ottawa is waiting for an answer from the Quebec Minister of Health, Gaëtan Barrette, but hopes the Vien Commission will help.
C'est sûr que nous autres, on est ouverts, puis on ne ferme pas la porte, mais c'est vraiment... C'est le ministre qui doit vraiment être à l'écoute de ce qu'on est en train de demander, de dénoncer, surtout devant la Commission.
In one comment, the Chief Commissioner, Jacques Vien, clearly expressed his view on this issue.
Mais on fait quoi quand il faut sauver la vie, puis il y a une urgence, puis on a une idée de ce qu'il faut faire, ben on pose des gestes.
Tomorrow, the Commission will hear about police and health services in Quebec First Nations communities. Danielle Rochette, APTN National News, Montreal.
The Quebec Native Women Association has gone public with a list of demands for the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Tom Fenario has more on that.
At this Montreal press conference, Quebec Native Women President Viviane Michel made it clear. It's time for the national inquiry to tighten up.
C'est vraiment une demande pour que ça marche mieux. C'est vraiment pas une demande pour laisser tomber la commission. On croit en cette commission. On croit au potentiel des gens qui travaillent dans cette commission, mais elle a besoin de se restructurer.
Quebec Native Women, or QNW for short, wants Indigenous Affairs to hear their concerns before they make a decision on the inquiry's request for an extension. QNW says that if an extension is granted, the inquiry should take 5 months off from hearings to restructure. One reason they say is that the inquiry is not sharing important information with some families before they testify. Eric Lepine is legal counsel for the QNW.
In a coroner report, there were some answers that would have been preferably disclosed to the witness before, so that the person knows exactly what happened.
Michel also emphasizes that family members are not receiving the long-term support they need after they testify.
C'est tellement traumatisant à une famille de faire revivre ce traumatisme. Donc c'est important pour nous, femmes autochtones du Québec, que ces familles-là soient bien entourées aussi dans l'aspect émotionnel ou aide psychologique qu'ils peuvent avoir.
So the QNW is asking for a meeting with Indigenous Relations Minister Bennett before an extension is granted. Meanwhile, they are not satisfied with how the inquiry has responded to their concerns.
And so we sent a letter with some of our concerns. So it remained basically, well, I wouldn't say unanswered, they answer, but in a very limited way.
The National Inquiry says they will not comment until they've had a chance to review the QNW's requests. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Montreal.
Health Canada has published a report on its consultations on the proposed Cannabis Act. The department asks stakeholders how packaging and warning labels should look. They suggested that the feds be flexible in providing security clearances for marginalized and racialized growers. A government spokesperson was non-committal.
There are very many Canadians who, as a result of a youthful transgression, may have obtained a criminal record for a non-violent cannabis-related offense, simple possession of cannabis, and that have gone on to lead very respectful and productive lives. And we believe that if they do not represent a threat to the integrity of the system that we are establishing, that we have to look at ways in which such individuals can be allowed to participate. But we will not compromise the integrity of the system that's being established.
And we'll have more on the Cannabis Act this Wednesday as we put cannabis in focus. A Manitoba war hero known as Canada's most decorated Indigenous veteran is being honored in Winnipeg. The city has renamed the North Centennial Recreation and Leisure Facility as Sergeant Tommy Prince Place. Sergeant Prince's son, along with dozens of others, were on hand for the special ceremony. Sergeant Prince served in the Second World War in Korea. He was a member of Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry and the U.S. Devil's Brigade, a special Allied commando unit. He received 11 medals during his service. He passed away in 1977, but his memory lives on. Hand games and dog sledding are just around the corner as we continue our coverage of the Arctic Winter Games. That's coming up after the break. Here's the rest of Tuesday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta, -3 in High Level, +3 in Grand Prairie, +4 in Edmonton and Lethbridge, +5 in Calgary, 6 above in Medicine Hat. Rain on the west coast, +8 in Vancouver, Campbell River, and a rain-snow mix in Bella Coola, +5 in Sandspit, 4 above in Prince George, +3 in snow in Smithers. In Yukon, -5 in Dawson City and Mayo. Over to NWT, 7 below in Fort Liard, -8 in Trout Lake, 9 below in Fort Simpson, -19 in Polituck, Inuvik, and Tuktoyaktuk, where snow is on the way. In Nunavut, -27 in Repulse Bay, 30 below in Cambridge Bay, -12 in Iqaluit, 31 below in Resolute. Welcome back. It was the largest hand games tournament in the history of the Northwest Territories. The games took place over the weekend in the small community of Béchausshow. 60 teams with more than 500 participants were vying for the $100,000 prize. Hand games are played by two teams who try to intimidate and deceive opposing teams while hiding a small object in their hands. For lifelong players, the game is about celebrating culture.
Now, back days, you play for your dog. If you have a dog team, you'll play for dogs. You'll play for your sleigh. You'll play for your pelts, fur pelts. So you got to play with something else. So it's been passed on for so many years. So today it's the same thing. Everything that we have is competition.
And Cody Stephen Mantla from Béchausshow won the tournament held in his home community. Many athletes have traveled long distances to attend the Arctic Winter Games. But what happens when teams pull out at the last minute or skip registration altogether? Our reporter Tamara Pimentel finds out.
The dogs are ready to run.
These dogs love it. If they couldn't run, they wouldn't have anything to do at that point. They love what they're doing, and you can see that when they go out and go up to the line because they're all excited to go.
The Morowski family has traveled over 36,000 kilometers east from Alaska to be here for the South Slave Arctic Winter Games. Being in the industry, you learn a few things.
We don't feed them the morning before the race. It's pretty much the only thing that we do differently. Some mushers probably do that too. It's just so they don't poop on the trail.
But hitting the Arctic Games trail along the Hay River wasn't so easy.
I am the main handler.
According to official AWG rules, a minimum of 4 different regions are needed for dog sledding. In 2016, host Greenland did not offer the sport because of low enrollment. This year, with only 2 teams in the running, Alaska and the NWT will win silver and gold in all categories.
I basically said, you know, that's going to be tough to do because we're already prepared, we've already paid, we got sponsors, we got all this stuff done, and you can't just cancel it at the last minute.
Scott Mrowski says there are many obstacles facing the dog race industry.
Climate change is creating issues for having enough snow. And our club has gotten smaller because for 2 years we didn't have any races.
It was a warm day, so my dogs were a little tired, a little thirsty the whole time, but otherwise it went pretty good.
The family weren't always mushers, but when the opportunity struck, they decided to learn a little northern culture.
I mean, it's a tradition. I mean, the dog sledding started out as a means of transportation, as a means of doing work.
The dogs are done racing, and it's time to rest up for the rest of the week.
I try to pace my team to a slower pace. They're not just like burning all their energy and they're just being super tired.
Mushers say they are hoping for cooler temperatures and gold ulus for the rest of the week. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Hay River.
Over to another sporting event, the annual Yukon Native Hockey Tournament wrapped up in Whitehorse this past weekend. And it wasn't just players and fans who celebrated. Local business owners also had something to cheer about. 43 teams competed in the 41st annual Yukon Native Hockey Tournament. And with such a big crowd comes big money. It's estimated that over $3 million was spent at local hotels, restaurants, and other businesses. Whitehorse Motors sold 12 vehicles over the weekend. Sales manager Jens Nielsen says that's $500,000 in business.
We sell someone a new truck like the one behind us, and I've personally helped many people load full box loads of dog food and food supplies and furniture into the new truck to take home. So I don't know how you put a full value on it. Simple as the Native Hockey Tournament is fantastic for business in Whitehorse.
Sounds like a success all around. That is your APTN National News for this Monday. For more news, including much more from the Arctic Winter Games, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. In case you missed it, APTN Investigates debuted Justice for Colton on Friday. An encore presentation of the documentary is up next. I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.